Hey, this is Marc Goldberg from Marc Vlogs Watches. I want to welcome you to another exciting episode. Welcome back, watch people. That's my new catchphrase. And in today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between regulating a watch, overhauling a watch, servicing a watch, and when should you do any of those things. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of this video, let me go ahead and show you the quick fist watch check. Ready? Here it is. Ready? Today, I am wearing the Tudor Black Bay ETA version. You can tell it's the ETA version because see the little smiley face down there? Yeah. Okay. And actually, I had this watch regulated, so we're going to talk all about that. I thought I needed it serviced, but I didn't. So let's talk about what I had done, where I had it done, and what it cost, and also what were the results. Now, all over the internet and in the forums and in the videos here on YouTube, you will hear all sorts of different pieces of advice and philosophies relating to when you should service a watch. So I'm going to personally tell you my view on this. Doesn't mean I'm right, doesn't mean that you are going to agree with me. And if you don't, go ahead and tell me in the comments. If you do, well, tell me a little bit about your experience also in the comments. And before we go any further, please, whether you're with me for the first time or the third or the fifth, let's go ahead and subscribe so we can do this together. We got lots to talk about, guys, so please subscribe. And if you've been with me a long time, thanks for doing that. First, you will hear any number of people saying that you should service your automatic watch, whether it's an in-house movement or whether it's an ETA or a Solita movement. You will hear people that tell you, and this is it's almost like the party line, service it every 5 years. And for the longest time, Rolex had a 5-year service interval, which they've extended fairly recently to 10 years, if I remember correctly. And I personally disagree with this philosophy. And what I'm going to tell you is, this is what I do. You may want to do something different than me. What I do, I feel like it might even be a little controversial. And that is, I don't service a watch until it begins to do something a little bit weird or different. So what do I mean by that? Well, if I have a watch that is running within spec, then I'm not going to service it. What I'm looking for is the watch to fall outside spec. Spec is going to vary according to the movement in the watch, right? So if you have a Rolex and it's a modern ceramic Rolex, then the spec for that watch is COSC certified, but they actually made it a superlative chronometer, which runs better than COSC. COSC, by the way, COSC, it's a certifying process. Involves a lot of testing on the watch, and I want to say those are certified to run somewhere between minus 4 seconds per day, losing as much as 4 seconds per day, gaining as much as 5, or is it 6? And then like your base ETA movement, 2824, if the manufacturer who puts that in a watch, which is what's in here, if they put the base level, the cheapest version of that ETA movement into a watch, it could run as poorly as something like minus 25 plus 30, something on those lines. But the average manufacturer of an expensive brand who has put an ETA watch has regulated that watch, and they will give you better specs than that. So the Tudor was bothering me. This is actually a rebuy, guys. Let me take it off and stick it in the camera just so you can have a better look at it. I had this watch a couple of years ago. It's a 41 millimeter dive watch by Tudor, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Rolex. And I felt like I liked it the first time that I owned it, but for whatever reason, I think I was snobbier about watches than I was then. And because I had a couple of Rolexes, I just didn't wear it much. But over time, I began to really miss that Tudor Black Bay, especially with this burgundy bezel. And they did reissue this watch slightly thicker and with an in-house movement that had a much longer power reserve. I think the power reserve on this is like 40 hours. And the one with the in-house movement has a power reserve of 70 hours. So it's much better, 70, 72 hours. But this watch, I just think it's a lot cuter. It has that little smiley face, the text here. Let's have a look. I should have just kind of pointed that out last time I had this thing held up. But if you look near the 6 o'clock position, you will see that the text is curved in a smiley face position and stainless rotor. I don't know, I can barely read it. Tell you what, why don't I drop a picture of it in here? I'm not wearing my cheaters. Here's a picture. So you can see that the dial is just, I find it very charming. I like it much better than the in-house version. Also, I think the in-house version on the crown has a shield. Hopefully you can make this out. On the crown here, it has the Tudor rose. So it distinguishes itself. Oh, also on the newer version, the bracelet has fake rivets on the side. I mean, old Rolex and Tudor Oyster bracelets used to have rivets, which was holding them together versus the screws that are in them today. And so that was common up through the late 60s, maybe even into the early 70s. And now as a vintage looking reissue, they've put it onto the new version of this watch. And I don't like that because they serve no purpose. They're like fake rivets. So I prefer this one. Anyway, I sold it and then I missed it. So a couple of years later, I bought it back from a different guy. Bought it on eBay. I always like to tell you folks what I have bought a watch for. I feel like I'm reasonably good about finding good deals on watches, and sometimes I want to inspire you to seek the best price possible. Other times you can inform me that, you know, I was an idiot and I overpaid. So I paid for this watch $2,500 on eBay, and it's a full kit. It even comes with an extra cloth strap or whatever it was, leather, I forget, but it's in the box. Anyway, full set. eBay, $2,500. Okay, and oh, listen, the bezel. Listen to this. Man. Now it's a 60 click, but the only watch with a click that metallic, that definitive, that amazing that I've ever found is also on a Tudor, and that's the Tudor Pelagos, okay? This is different than the Rolex Submariner. The Rolex Submariner, it's a 120 click bezel. I think the Rolex bezel is the one by which all bezels should be judged. It's just flat out amazing. Anyway, great bezel. So, you know, I'm digressing a little, but here was the point. I loved the watch because I had this emotional attachment. I regretted selling it, so it was an emotional rebuy. And not long after I purchased it, I discovered it ran significantly fast per day, and it was running, this watch right here, it was running plus 20 seconds per day, which means it was gaining not quite, but almost like a second an hour. And boy, did that bug me. You know, it just, I don't know about you guys. You know, I was playing with the bezel there for you, and I had to zero it out before I could go on with the video. I have a problem. So, look, I know that no watch is perfect, and so rather than drive myself crazy about watches gaining or losing time, the way I soothe myself is to just accept the watch running within spec. So whatever the spec is, I just want it to do that. And I honestly don't really remember the spec for this version of the ETA, but certainly Tudor would have regulated it, and 20 seconds fast is crazy. You can get these far more accurate than that. So it really bugged me. And at the same time, I bought a Marathon GSAR, and let me go ahead and put a picture of that in right here. And I love that Marathon GSAR also. You know, it's a very rugged, rough and tumble, very manly watch, very, you know, something that you could really knock around. This is casual because, you know, it's a dive watch and it's got a red bezel on it, but it's a little dressier than the GSAR, and that Marathon, it's like, you know, bang it up and it'll look even better. It's like a real tactical watch. So I like that as well. And it was not keeping as time as poorly as this, but it was running about 15 seconds slow. And I'm pretty sure that wasn't within spec, but I bought it used on Marathon. What did I pay for it? Bought it used on eBay, excuse me. And also a full set, and it was a pretty new one because Marathon used to come with an old cardboard box, and these days they come with a really nice lacquered presentation box. And that's only the last couple years, I think. So mine's pretty new. And I don't really know the spec on it, and I paid like $900 for it, I guess. Yeah, I think I paid around $900. So I did well with it, but it was running really slow. losing something like 15 seconds per day, and I did not want to return it to the seller because I got a great price on it and I had bonded with the watch. So anyway, I kind of dug around the forums, and those of you on the forums who know the guy that I am about to talk about, well, you can kick in nice comments in the comment section if you will, but you're going to be a little mad at me because I'm about to blow the lid off of Mark Sirianni in Kane, Pennsylvania, and I will put his contact information in the description of this video. And I'll just let you know, this guy is a full-time watchmaker. He services pretty much everything, although I'm not 100% if he does chronographs, so you'd have to look at his website for that. He's old school, so his website is not high tech, but he has one. And Mark was an incredible communicator. He just absolutely kept in touch with me about every step of the way, from costs to payments to shipping to, he even wanted me to confirm for him that I had received my watches back when he shipped them, even though he shipped them with tracking, so he would have gotten a notification. But he just wanted to make sure that my babies were back, on my wrist and that I was happy. So I gotta say, this is one terrific guy in terms of communication, and that is really hard to find in this day and age. So that's one thing. Also, honesty, integrity, and price. Let me tell you what. I don't like servicing a watch that's running correctly and is within spec. Now, maybe you guys like to go ahead and overhaul every 5 years on a schedule, but I don't like to do that. I'm only gonna put money into the watch if it starts to do something a little bit weird. And both the Tudor and the Marathon, one was running way too fast, one was running way too slow. And I figured, let me just send them in to Mark. So I contacted him. He said, yeah, go right ahead and send them. I told him I wanted them regulated. And the process of regulating a watch, it's pretty quick and simple. All the watchmaker does is he's got to open the watch, noodle with whatever the components are inside that control speed or slow. Before they do that, even they put it on a machine. They get a readout from the amplitude, the beat rate, whether it's running fast or slow, and how much, and they can turn that. They can turn the watch into multiple positions because gravity affects the movement, right? And so they run that tape in 4 or 5 different positions, and they get a really good diagnostic off of the watch. A brilliantly computerized diagnostic, and then they know what they need to do to regulate it and get it better, and then they retest it. So, and usually that's not a really labor-intensive process. You need to be a very well-trained, specialized expert to do it. But at the same time, you are not entirely dismantling and taking apart and cleaning and replacing worn parts and then putting back together the entire movement, all 150, 200 parts. And that's what the process of overhauling does. So regulating is going to be a bit easier, actually quite a bit easier. Anyway, when I told Mark that I wanted to send these in for regulation, he said to me right away, look, just so you know, I don't regulate a watch that I haven't serviced. And I was like, okay, fine, what's the cost for servicing? And because they were simple ETA movements, his base price was, I want to say, around $125, which I think was it's an amazing price, like a really good price. And of course, it could go up from there depending on what he discovers inside. But talk about communication. He told me that's the base price just so I would have an idea of what I was getting into, but that once he had opened them up, he would communicate with me what he found and confirm that price or let me know if it was going to have to creep up a little bit depending on what he found in there. So I sent the watches off, and before long, what happened was Mark communicated with me, told me he had opened both of the watches, and he changed his mind and offered to just regulate instead of overhauling them. He did that for 2 reasons. One, Mark's got a pretty good business, I guess. He's well known, well liked, and his shop was slammed with watches where he had more time-consuming jobs to do. And that was the first reason. But probably more importantly, opening up and examining the movements in this watch and in the GSAR, he told me they both look really clean, and he didn't feel that they really super required an overhaul at that time. So he offered, since he had them in his possession, to go ahead and regulate them. I asked him to do that, but if possible, my bugaboo is I hate watches running slow. It's so much easier if they're going to be off a little, and what watch isn't, if they would be off a little to the fast side, because then you can just pull the crown and then push the crown back in and do that every once in a while and you're done. Much easier than resetting a watch that's slow. So he let me know, hey, these things I'll try. And but let me tell you, did he try? He did amazing. He did fabulous. So the Marathon is running something like +1 per day. And I haven't tested this yet, but it looks to me like it's running maybe +2 per day. I'll tell you another time, but I can tell it's super improved. It's much, much improved. It's running a smidgen fast rather than a smidgen slow, which is terrific. I'm really happy with that. And so now I love my watches. I'm not like OCD every day, like, yeah, it's wrong. I use an app on the phone called Watch Time to check the accuracy of the watch. And then if it's really off, I'm gonna have to fix that on a daily basis. If it's a couple seconds per day off, then I might fix that every second or third day. But the OCD is strong in this one, and therefore I prefer a watch which has some accuracy to it. If it's running within spec, every few days I will correct it. If it's running out of spec, it's gonna make me crazy and I have to do something. So you're probably wondering what I paid, and Marc was very good to me, and I want to say now I paid for the shipping there to him. He paid for the shipping back to me. He sent it USPS priority, and so I guess that maybe cost him like $7. I think I paid $45, people. I think it was like $45 to regulate 2 watches and have them shipped back to me. How long did it take? I told Marc to take his time because I didn't want to be a pain in the ass customer. I figured I would get better treatment, better service, that he'd let me come back to him if I needed to at some point. And he's a really busy guy, but like he got it done in something like 3 weeks, and he could have taken longer and I wouldn't have minded because I've been kind of busy and traveling and so forth. Okay, well that was a whole lot of waffling and chit-chatting and talking, but hey guys, if I'm you, I would not overhaul a watch if it was running great, but I might regulate it if it was not running within spec. But if you haven't done anything to it in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and it's running funny, then yes, I would overhaul it. I can recommend Marc. His contact information is here. Tell me, what is your philosophy about regulating watches? Would you prefer to overhaul a watch? What do you think about an overhaul for in the $125 to $150 range? What do you think about $20 to regulate a watch? Crazy, right? Okay, tell me your stories, bad and good, about regulation, repairing, watch service, and all like that. And this has been Marc Goldberg. Thanks for joining me. See you next time, watch people. Peace out.